Now the next part of my presentation. I will tell you all you need to know about why Scythe is a very, very good tool to instruct strategic thinking. Why am I using Scythe? Scythe is a turn-based strategy game. It's a conflict simulation in an alternative timeline after World War I in Eastern Europe. Fictional countries expand own influence by using shared and unique abilities. That's of course politically completely correct. You can do nothing wrong with this. On the right side, the picture, that's the Roosevelt heroine. So the game is also perfectly gender balanced. There are several female heroes available, so it's fine. Scythe is, from my point of view, a good template to learn strategic thinking because there are so many different possible strategies available that can lead to victory. And because the factions are unique and abilities are randomized, it's a high replay ability, but it's also a certain asymmetry in the game that makes planning very challenging. The game is very fast and everybody who plays it will have a steep learning curve. That is, of course, a very, very good thing if you are running it on a seminar or in a seminar. I am not alone with my opinion. So Scythe might be the best board game of our time. It's an award-winning 4X strategy board game. 4X meaning you need to expand, explore, exploit, and exterminate. But you do not actually need to exterminate that much, and it's not a requirement to do combat at all to win the game, and this makes it very unique. And on another side, the artwork of the game is just stunning and beautiful. And on a side note, actually Scythe is a game that was created after the artwork. So Stonemaier Games decided to develop this game based on the artwork, and the artwork was not developed for the game. So that is also a unique origin story for a game. Scythe has also an official trailer by Stonemaier Games, which is watchable on YouTube. I will not show it here, but I will link in the show notes to the trailer. We produced our own trailer where I explain the advantages of playing Scythe in a seminar setting. This trailer is about 4.5 minutes long, but it's only in German. I will link to it in the show notes. Let's move on and have a closer look at the game itself. All the pictures in this presentation are my own personal pictures I took with my iPhone, and I asked Stonemaier Games that this is perfectly okay to use these pictures in a seminar setting for educational purposes, which this of course is. Now let's make a deep dive into Scythe. So in Scythe you are playing one of 5 factions, at least in the basic edition. We also have the extended edition, so there are 2 more factions available, but all of these factions have unique abilities. So this is the Nordic Kingdoms faction, and the asymmetry, the specific features of the mechs, the big mechanical warfighting machines you can build in this game, they are different for all factions. And each faction has a very unique capability for its own. For example, the Nordics, their workers may swim across rivers, and no other faction has this capability. So this is actually the perfect foundation for a SWOT analysis, where you can do your internal analysis of strengths and weaknesses and your external analysis of opportunity and threats, but not also for your own faction, but also for all the other factions, which is of course the very, very interesting thing. In Scythe, you have several of these player mats, which is in essential a kind of production board, and you can actually view it as a value chain or a military industrial complex you need to manage, because this is your economy, and this economy will produce wealth. It will produce your warfighting capabilities and your power. And the way you optimize this value chain will actually decide if you win the game or not. And of course, you have to take strategic balance into account, because you might get a huge economic advantage and you may become rich in a certain way, but you might become a very weak and easy target to pick up because you don't have any capabilities to build up deterrence. So this is not a trivial thing to do, and it's an engine building game where you try to build up this engine to produce smoothly, and in the end you have a huge return of investment, because in the end the player with the most coins wins, and everything in the end is put into a calculator and translated into a monetary value. This is how the game components look. You have these very high quality produced miniatures and wood pieces, and you see this player mat is called innovative, where the other one on the slide before was an industrial player mat. And there are actually 5 different player mats in the basic game, and in the extended version there are 7 different player mats, and with 7 nations and 7 different player mats you have 49 combination possibilities. So this alone shows you that there is a high replay value in the game of Scythe, and of course also a certain effort you need to put into planning, because there are different combinations that are available for you as a faction. And as a player you might have actually very different factions to play with very different player mats in combination. So that is always a challenge. From a wargaming perspective, this is not just blue versus red. This is blue versus red versus yellow versus black and versus white. You have 5 different factions who each play against each other. And if you have the extended version, you also have 2 different nations also available. So you have blue, the Nordics, red, Rusviet, yellow, Crimea, black, Saxony, and white, Polonia, each with their different special capabilities. But you do not only have 5 factions, you have 5 teams, and each team is 5 player strong. And as a general staff officer, of course, you always think about how you would organize such a team. And one possible solution would be that you have a leader who is, of course, responsible for the final decision, but also for diplomacy. And you have SMEs, subject matter experts, who are responsible for red teaming. So they would have to predict the behavior of the other teams. So a kind of strategic foresight, but from the other point of view. And based on that, make good recommendation for your own team leader, and thereby delivering decision support. And as you have seen in the player mats. There are certain activities, actions you can do in your military industrial complex, and of course you might get in a specific way very specific, very knowledgeable about how you would need to deploy, to move, to build, to trade, to enlist, to upgrade, or to bolster. Each team would have in the on-premise version a manual board game available for all their planning and visualization and red teaming and wargaming, whatever. But also they would have certain visualizations available, and one of these things would have been a huge DIN A0 printout of the map, a little bit upgraded from me with certain numbers, so that an operational movement in this area could be identified very, very clearly. So you would say, I would move my hero from the home base in Polonia to field 14, and it would be perfectly clear where your unit would be on the map. One of the seminar goals was that the participants really needed to use specific management tools like the Kanban board, which is the most easiest agile planning tool you can implement. This is no black magic at all. It's basically a to-do list, and you collect all the things you really want to do in your backlog on the left, prioritize it, and then put it into different stages of implementation, like in progress, in peer review, in test. You see, this is from the software development community, a lot of these agile planning tools, and not all of these actually can be applied to a staff exercise planning procedure. However, a lot of it can, basically, and one of the most important things is, of course, to prioritize whatever you want to do and then put it on a kind of timeline, and to see how these things would be implemented. From a military point of view, the order loop is probably the most interesting thing for participants to learn new. Not even every soldier knows about the order loop, which is one of the most essential strategic planning tools of the last century. It is observe, orient, decide, act, and we'll take a closer look at the order loop on the next slide. I don't want to go into deep detail on the order loop. It is a four-step decision-making process approach, and it was developed by an American F-16 pilot, John Boyd, and therefore there's of course a unique military perspective on the order loop. However, it is also very common in business wargaming contexts to use the order loop as a strategic tool or a tool for developing a strategy. And some experts actually consider the order loop as the application of the scientific method for strategy building. So you should know about the order loop, and the important thing in the seminar is, of course, that you have the opportunity to apply the order loop several times, because you run through the decision-making process several times, 16 times in this seminar to be precise. In the last run, our game lasted 16 turns. However, caveat, due to the online distributed facilitation, I was not able to coach all the teams directly using the order loop, which would have been possible in the on-premise setting. So frankly, a lot of the teams used the usual approach for building up a strategy, which is the muddling through approach. and they did not actually use the order loop that much. But they used the Kanban board, and they actually found the Kanban board helpful in their decision and planning process. The standard SWOT analysis is, of course, the foundation of a strategy building process, or can be made a foundation of any strategy building approach. And the teams, the players, the participants were tasked to start their whole strategy building process by making a thorough SWOT analysis on their specific teams. And this is the important thing, all the red teamers in the single teams, and there would be 4 red teamers in all of the teams, so 4 times 5, 20 red teamers, all of them would have to do a SWOT analysis on another team. So this is a very essential thing in wargaming, that you need to red team a specific opponent or competitor to foresee his own behavior and maybe his own strategy. I also provided for the teams this visualization to help plan and visualize their specific turns. And they could plot here on this slide the first 5 turns they would like to do. And concerning their military industrial complex, they would have the opportunity to make a top row action and maybe a bottom row action, depending on how smart they were in combining certain moves. And this all could have been played out in or synchronized in sprints. So you could also you would have had the capability to apply a Scrum approach on this seminar. However, I was out of Scrum Masters for the on-premise seminar, and in an online distributed way, it would have been even more complicated to implement a Scrum Master into this system. So we used the Kanban board as the main planning tool for agile strategy implementation, and that worked from my point of view very well. This would have been another visualization to prioritize the strategic goals, thinking from the end state after analyzing your strategic environment, and then planning from the end state. Like, what is actually your strategic objective? In Scythe, you have the opportunity to get 10 achievements, but only 6 of them would really materialize into a star. And after 6 stars, the player who places the 6th star on the game board, this will end the game. And then everybody needs to count their coins and all the other things a faction has, the territorial control, resources. This will all be multiplied and put into coins. But a star is the most prestigious thing you can get in the game and the most valuable thing. However, you can only get 6 stars in total. But of course, you might want to think about which of the 10 possible stars you want to go for. And that is, of course, the centerpiece of your strategy. As a facilitator, I hope and I observed that this Scythe environment provided a very good opportunity to apply these 4 C skills in teamwork: communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. Communication being the most essential one, especially in an online distributed environment. But of course, I also hope that the skills you acquire in a game like Scythe, like learning to play the game of Scythe, that there's actually a certain transfer on a higher level, the meta level, where you learn something for your strategic, for your agile mindset, because certain cognitive patterns in decision making you run through several times, and therefore my thesis is the retention rate of these processes is higher than just by a normal exercise where you do not even go through the whole decision-making process. And on the individual level, of course, I hope that the application of all these 4C skills in this teamwork internally, and then the collaboration and confrontation with the other teams, that is also something that will be retained by the players. A short view back into the rear mirror. In November last year, I had a kickoff with the participants, and there was already distributed learning planned using the Slack workspace I provided. I'm not sure that they really did it. I did not observe very much communication inside the Slack workspace. Students always have more important things to do, like examinations that were running, and they try to establish more contact in the teams 2 weeks before the seminar started. However, that was when COVID-19 really enforced specific behaviors and circumstances, and it was not possible for the teams to meet in person and actually get a deeper understanding, a more recent understanding of playing the game of Scythe. This was the plan for the on-premise seminar. So the idea was that on Monday they would actually be able to play the game twice. A very first introduction game to get re-familiar with the whole game, and then a second game to replay the situation they got handed, and then to improve their strategy. And with these ideas, they would start on Tuesday for the third game. So in the whole seminar, in the online distributed seminar, we were not able to do this. We just actually played only one game. And we started on Monday late afternoon with the very first move to get to know how to run the process. The Tuesday took a long time to get half through the game. And on Wednesday, we were able to speed up the process and finish the game and have a in-depth after-action review and reflection on it. So one of the main ideas in wargaming is to replay a game so that you can actually improve your strategy. This was in the conception, but we couldn't really operate it in the online distributed setting. However, we were able to play the game at least once. So this would have been the Wednesday, and on Thursday there was actually a workshop and a presentation planned where the teams would have had the opportunity to present their personal experience on playing the game of Scythe and discuss with workshop participants their experience and their learning behavior and results concerning strategic thinking and agile strategy implementation. That was of course not possible because all these workshops were just cancelled. So the workshop I was talking about would have been this module Charlie, Gamification of Strategic Thinking, on the forum Zukunftsorientierte Steuerung, something like future-oriented steering. And the subtitle would have been Strategic Decision Based on a Simulation, or making real good strategic decisions based on simulation. And the funny thing is that for Scythe, there is the digital edition on Steam available. So if you have a 100% digital simulation of your board game available. And that, of course, is a great way to use a simulation as a decision support tool. And actually, I observed that a few teams did this. I talked about this in the kickoff, that we could actually play against each other on Scythe and on Steam, and I could coach them. But the digital version would be a perfect learning tool to get into the game. And a few of them used this. And in the seminar, a few of them used Scythe as a decision support tool. This was brilliant and really in the mindset of the forum that was cancelled. I tasked the participants with the following mission in November last year at the kickoff. Know your faction, analyze the strategic environment, develop a strategy, implement your strategy, and adapt your strategy using an agile mindset, using the Kanban and OODA loop, and of course, win the game, which implicitly meant they should learn the game, they should learn about strategy in general, they should learn about the Kanban board, and they should learn about the OODA loop. I actually asked that each team would have had 2 experts on the Kanban board and 2 experts on the OODA loop to explain these methods within the team, so that it was a kind of burden sharing inside the team. Well, the OODA loop felt a little bit short due to the online facilitation, but the Kanban board was actually implemented using the Trello board. This ends this part of the presentation, and probably the most interesting part will be the next part, the online facilitation, where my original plan meets the pandemic circumstances we had to face. So, see you in the next presentation.